This video was brought to you by Brilliant. Today, shock in the US after the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, Gaza suffers one of the deadliest weeks so far, and Rwanda's president is on course for an easy re-election. From TLDR News, this is your daily briefing for Monday the 15th of July 2024. US politics was shaken to its core when Donald Trump, 45th US president and presumptive Republican nominee for president, was wounded in an assassination attempt. In footage capturing the moment, as Trump delivered a campaign speech, gunfire was heard and the president grabbed his ear, then subsequently collapsed behind the podium for cover, and Secret Service rushed to the stage to protect the former president. After rising from the floor and appearing winded, Trump raised his fist to the crowd before being rushed to an armored car bound for the hospital, where he was treated for a few hours before being discharged, seemingly only sustaining injuries to his right ear. The gunfire, however, injured two attendees and killed another rally-goer who had been trying to protect his children. In this astonishing photo from the New York Times, it appears as if the president was only inches away from being struck in the head by the bullet, a shot which would almost certainly have been fatal. Trump was said to have been in good spirits following the attempt, as well as feeling rather spiritual, with some advisors saying they'd never seen the former president so introspective. In a statement, he urged Americans to stand united, and in a recent interview, Trump himself appeared still spooked by the event, saying to the New York Post reporter that he was lucky to be alive, and he was supposed to be dead. President Biden was at his weekend retreat in Delaware when the incident happened, and immediately issued a statement of support towards his opponent, and rushed back to the White House. He and Trump reportedly had a brief phone conversation where the president wished his predecessor and rival well. Then, yesterday, Biden delivered a rare Oval Office address where he urged a tone down of political rhetoric and said that using violence to achieve political means was never acceptable in America. This was delivered on the eve of the Republican National Convention, which is set to begin today, with many Republican speakers being ordered to tone down rhetoric by the Trump campaign. The Biden campaign, after the assassination attempt, pulled television ads, but is set to resume them following his interview with NBC today. For context, this was the first serious attempt on the life of a US president since the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan in 1981, and was the first assassination attempt of a major political candidate during an election year since the fatal shooting of Bobby Kennedy in 1968. The suspect in the Trump shooting, who was shot and killed by the Secret Service immediately after the gunfire, is a 20-year-old male identified as Thomas Matthew Crooks, a local from Pennsylvania. The FBI is still investigating the motive of the individual, and there remain serious questions to be answered as to the security failings that led to the assassination attempt. There's more on the way, but remember to subscribe and ring the bell for more daily briefing tomorrow. Plus, if you want to support the channel like Ben Silverman, then consider joining the new TLDR membership program for just $1.99. Next up, the Palestinian militant group Hamas say that Gaza's ceasefire talks remain ongoing, and that its military commander, Mohammed Deif, is in good health, just a day after Israel launched a massive airstrike targeting Deif that Gaza health officials say killed at least 90 people. Mohammed Deif has been in hiding for years, as he has long topped Israel's most wanted list. And on Saturday night, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that following the earlier airstrike, there still isn't absolute certainty about whether Deif had been killed. Hamas has since said that Deif is fine, although a senior Hamas commander was reportedly killed in the strike. The Israeli strike on Saturday hit the Al-Muasi area of Khan Yunis in southern Gaza, which had been designated as a humanitarian area that the Israeli military had repeatedly urged Palestinians to evacuate to from other areas. Now, Gaza health officials say that more than 91 people were killed and 300 others injured. Dozens more Palestinians were killed in multiple strikes the following day, Sunday, capping off one of the deadliest weeks in Gaza since the war broke out 9 months ago. Amid rumors that Hamas had pulled out of ceasefire negotiations, a Hamas spokesperson clarified that, quote, there is no doubt that the horrific massacres will impact any efforts in the negotiations, but insisted that the efforts and endeavors of the mediators remain ongoing. Next, today marks the beginning of the Chinese Communist Party's third plenum, a major meeting held by the ruling party every 5 or so years to unveil key economic reforms and policy directives for the year ahead. With trade tensions with the West, a property sector crisis, high local government debt, sub-forecast economic growth, and weak consumer demand, the stakes are high for this meeting. The 4-day meeting, overseen by President Xi Jinping, will, the party says, primarily examine issues related to further comprehensively deepening reform and advancing Chinese modernization. However, observers and analysts are skeptical that there'll be any major economic changes or pivots, instead expecting modest policy tweaks and targeted efforts to address structural issues and social support. Many expect the meeting to greenlight greater coordination on building China into a science and technology power, a key goal of President Xi, and something that's heightened tensions with both the US and EU, both of which have imposed heavy tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles for alleged unfair subsidies. Moving on to Rwanda, where polls are open today for their general election. However, it's all but certain to result in a fourth term for President Paul Kagame. Kagame faces the same two opponents as he did in the last election in 2017, where he was re-elected with 98.79% of the vote. And that's at least in part because other potential opposition candidates were barred from running by the state-run Electoral Commission. Back in 1994, Kagame led his rebel forces to victory, overthrowing Rwanda's extremist regime and ending the brutal genocide that killed some 800,000 over a period of 100 days. Kagame then became Rwanda's de facto leader before becoming president in 2000, a position that he's retained since then, winning every election with over 90% of the vote. But while Kagame has been credited for reviving the country, bringing stability, economic development, and flexing Rwanda's soft power on the world stage, his record on human rights and authoritarianism has been widely criticized. Kagame has also been accused of stoking violence and unrest in the neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo by supporting and fighting alongside the M23 rebel group. And finally, we end with some uplifting news that for the first time in 400 years, a baby beaver has been born in Northumberland, England. The National Trust said that the baby beaver, or kit, was born less than 12 months after the charity released 4 adult beavers into an enclosure on the Wallington estate in the north of England. The family have spent the last year or so building dams, canals, and burrows, helping to slow the flow of water and boosting biodiversity in the region. The lead ranger on the estate, Helen MacDonald, said that we're thrilled that after an absence of around 400 years, we now have beavers back and breeding. It's interesting that even as people ostensibly into politics, the TLDR team spends more and more time analysing data and economic information as it becomes increasingly critical. But as a bunch of people who are ordinarily more focused on words than numbers, we've really benefited from courses on brilliant.org in order to keep ourselves sharp. That's because Brilliant is the best way to learn maths and computer science in a fun and interactive way. From foundational and advanced maths to AI, data science, neural networks, decision making, and more, with new lessons added monthly. Even if you, like us, don't necessarily think of yourself as a traditionally STEM kind of person, these courses could prove incredibly useful for your life and career. In fact, Brilliant recently launched a ton of new content in data, all of which uses real-world data to train you to see trends and make better informed decisions. When it comes to our work, courses like these can help us to parse and visualize massive datasets and make them easier for both us and you to interpret. Plus, these new courses include real-life datasets from sources like Starbucks, X, and Spotify in order to bring the learning to life. To try everything that Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, go to brilliant.org/TLDR or click the link in the description. Plus, by doing so, you'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Thank you for watching, and thanks to Brilliant for sponsoring this video.